Hello, everyone. Thanks for joining another Cyber Skyline Live. I'm Franz Payer from Cyber Skyline, and I'm here to help you learn cybersecurity. We run these episodes for you, so please stick to the end and let us know what topics you want us to cover next. This week's topic is open source intelligence basics. So I'm going to jump straight into my slides, but please ask any questions you have along the way, and we will get to those questions as we walk through today's show. So let's get started. So open source intelligence is the collection and analysis of data that is gathered from public sources, including the internet. Basically, this involves doing research on a target and using any publicly available resources to help you understand that. You're going to be piecing together data from multiple different sources. Maybe you get some information from one website, and that leads you down a rabbit hole. You start looking up similar information. You find something else on a different website, and you combine the pieces of information together to get a clear understanding of your target. This is a little bit vague right now because it's a very general concept. The purpose and the scope of what you're trying to do with open source intelligence is going to depend on the target and your goals with doing open source intelligence. Another key component of open source intelligence is understanding the reliability and authenticity of information. So if you're trying to, say for example, try to find someone's phone number online and you're at this random sketchy website that makes you pay to receive someone's phone number, there's a high likelihood that that might not be accurate. Maybe that person's phone number has changed in the meantime, or maybe it's just completely incorrect. You have to be able to understand how reliable information is because making assumptions on that data could be could have some consequences, right? If you're overly confident in your understanding of the information, that could cause problems, especially when this starts being applied to some more professional settings. Say you're doing threat intelligence and you are trying to do attribution. Who who is the actor who perpetuated a cyber attack? If you are overly confident in sources of information which are not reliable, then that could lead you to pointing the finger at the wrong person. So keep in mind that when you go through open source intelligence, this is a little bit of a investigation. You're a detective. You need to pick together all these different clues. You need to understand how much you should rely on one piece of information, and you're trying to create a comprehensive story which meets the objectives that you set in advance. So some activities that you might be setting for yourself, you might be participating in if you're trying to do open source intelligence, is maybe you're trying to find out where a photo was taken. So trying to find out the GPS coordinates of that photo. Maybe you're doing you're a private investigator, or you're trying to do a threat analysis on an individual. You're trying to identify the personal information. Maybe that's email address, physical address, phone number, etc. You're trying to find personal information about this individual. Another activity could be trying to identify what technologies or software a company uses. Maybe you're doing this instead of looking at it from a personal view, looking at security and trying to gain intel on an organization. Keep in mind that open source intelligence is just it's investigative work, right? Depending on the circumstances for what you're trying to do in open source intelligence, you might need to get permission. So if you are trying to do open source intelligence on a person without their permission, that could be considered stalking. That's not okay. You need to be able to make sure that you're not breaking any laws or being creepy when you're doing this. There are a lot of legitimate use cases for open source intelligence, like maybe you're being hired to do open source intelligence on a company to figure out what information are they releasing to the public that they don't intend to be releasing to the public. You're doing an audit on their footprint. um, Maybe some individual wants to know their own personal footprint, right? They want to know, do I have too much personal information on the internet? It is very, very important that you understand the legal ramifications of what you're doing, and when applicable, you're getting the proper consent to do your open source intelligence investigations. Do not forget that component, because that is the fine line that makes this a legitimate operation into an illegitimate, illegal operation. So let's take a look at this concept of Google dorking. I mentioned previously that the internet is going to be a pretty big source of information for open source intelligence. There is something called Google dorking, which is effectively using special keywords within Google to help you refine your search so that there's a lot of like SEO, which will put a lot of fluff and marketing stuff to the top of your results. And you might not be interested in that type of stuff that has high SEO. You are specifically looking for certain pages, certain pieces of information. And Google dorking is the process of providing specialized search queries in your searches to narrow down your results to get exactly what you're looking for so that you're not being inundated with things that have a high degree of SEO, search engine optimization, which is typically marketing information which might not be relevant. There is a useful tool to help you with Google dorking, which I highly recommend, which is I misspelled Google Dorks. You can find the pre-made Google Dorks from the Google hacking database on exploitdb.com. So if you go to that website, they have a section on their Google hacking database, which will show you some pre-made ones, which will help you find some like sensitive or interesting information that you could use when you're doing open source intelligence. Now, if you're trying to do Google dorking by yourself, there's a couple different queries that you want to learn as the common important ones for Google dorking. First is file type. Basically, if you're trying to search for a file, you can actually use the file type keyword to look for a specific file type. So in this example here, we're looking for passwords, and we're interested in looking for any PDFs that match on the word passwords. So maybe you're searching passwords and you're getting web pages about password policy and password reset, all these types of things. What you're really looking for is there any chance that a PDF was uploaded with passwords in the PDF? You can use the file type keyword to help you narrow down on just those PDFs. You can also use the site keyword to restrict searches to a specific website. So if you're trying to find passwords on a specific website, if I type in passwords site example.com, this will only give me anything that matches passwords on that website so that you can filter out any other websites that might be showing up in your search results. You can also use in URL and in title to help you find keywords in the URL or title of a page. This can be particularly helpful if you are searching for specific like admin panels or pages which are well known for pieces of software. So for example, WordPress websites typically have a URL which is wp-admin.php. So you can search in URL for specifically the WordPress admin page to see if you can access the admin page for a website that's running WordPress. Maybe you don't know it's running WordPress. You can do a search to see if it is running WordPress that way. Or you can get directly to that page and maybe you have an attack that will do like a brute force on the WordPress admin page. Being able to use in URL and in title can help you identify those sensitive pages. You might also find configuration pages of some sort. You might also find, I've seen webcams that have predefined URLs. You can search for that webcam. If you're not familiar with the index of page that I have here with the in title example, Apache has the ability to show the contents of everything inside a folder, and I've often done an index of in title search to find specifically those types of Apache index of pages because those index of pages might contain code that is running the web server, or it might contain configuration files with passwords. So those are pretty useful for finding specific pages and files associated with pieces of software that will help you gain more information. You can also use the minus sign, and I know this is a little bit confusing because the minus is also the bullet point here. But if you want to omit any specific words from your search results, you can use the minus. So let's just say you're searching for password information online. You can do password minus reset because maybe you're not interested in password reset pages. You want to find actual passwords. You could do the minus reset to remove those results from your search. And there's also the ability to use the double quotes to do an exact search. So if you're searching for admin passwords without the double quotes, there's a good chance that you're getting information about the admin page, and maybe you're getting results about password policy or password reset pages separately, right? Like this, you're getting results that are specifically about the admin page and results that are specific about like password policy. If you do the double quotes and you surround your search query in double quotes, it will only search on things that match admin passwords together rather than separately. So by default, Google will give you results that will have both. It will have results that have one or the other. By putting in quotes, it will only give you results that have admin and passwords together like that, which is very, very helpful. All right. We're gonna do an example of Google Dorking later in this episode, but let's move on to another concept. There's a concept of metadata. So metadata is the reason why people tell you to be very careful when you're posting photos online, because metadata is information that provides uh, additional context, additional information about a file that is not necessary for the primary use of the file. You might see metadata providing extremely sensitive information associated with like an image or a video or an audio clip or even Word documents. I was actually recently watching a true crime show on Netflix where they got a ransom note from someone that was sent to an email as a Word doc, and they're able to figure out who sent the ransom by looking at the author field in the metadata for the Word doc. So there's a lot of information contained in the file that people don't even realize. And so some examples include the author, maybe there's a creation date. If you're talking about like a picture, it could be information about the device that took the picture. You might have GPS coordinates about where that photo was taken. If you're looking at like a video or an audio file, it might have copyright information. It might have information about the publisher. There's a whole swath of information that you might not even realize is in metadata. And the metadata is also going to vary depending on the file, right? So having a Word doc, you might have specific information about like what version of Microsoft Word that Word doc was edited in, which is, not relevant to like an image or a video. An image or a video might have information like GPS coordinates for an image. Video or audio, you might have information about like the bit rate, or like the length of the video or the audio. So there's a lot of information in the metadata that you can find directly. There's a lot of information in metadata that you can find that people don't quite realize. Now, there are a couple ways to go and get metadata from a file. The one that I use, that is the quickest, and I prefer doing this, is just see if there's an online metadata viewer. If you're not worried at all about information about that file being shared online, you can use an online viewer, upload the file to that site, and see what it tells you. Be very careful. I put that caveat there. If as long as you don't care that that data is being saved in some database somewhere, right? Because you probably don't know the other party very well who's running that website, and they could be selling that data to someone else. You don't know. So only use this if you're comfortable with the metadata and the contents of that file that you're uploading being made publicly available. But that's a very quick way to find metadata that doesn't risk you putting yourself at risk. Because the other way is trying to use a metadata program. So actually downloading a program which will extract metadata from the file that you send it. This is more risky because obviously you're downloading a file off the internet, and how much due diligence are you doing to make sure that this is legitimate? If you are doing this metadata program, I would highly recommend that you use a virtual machine, you take a snapshot, you put the program in the virtual machine, and you run it there. Just in case it's malware, you can revert it, no harm done. Be very, very careful when you are using these types of metadata viewers that are kind of untrusted. If you don't trust the website, if you don't trust the program that you're downloading, you probably want to actually use multiple sources to verify the data. It's possible that there is something bad in the code for either for the online viewer or the program that you download, and it gives you inaccurate information. So go to two different sources, compare the metadata, make sure that it's the same across both of those different sources. Other ways that you can view metadata, there's the ability to like just take the file, right click on it, and do view properties when you're in the file explorer. Like by default, Windows or Mac OS X, they have some information in there that the operating system will obtain for you in the from the file. It won't give you typically these application specific bits of metadata. So for example, if you have an image, it might not give you the GPS coordinates of the image, but it might give you information such as like the author of that image. And another final way that I use to find metadata is by running the strings command. This is extremely helpful when you have a file that you might not like have an obvious program, like an obvious metadata viewer for you to use. If you're talking about these types of files, images, audio, video, Word docs, they're binary files, and oftentimes the metadata is text. And so the strings program will easily be able to pull out the metadata and separate it out from the actual contents, like the actual substance of the file itself, because information such as an author name is a text string that the string program will be able to pull out. This isn't always the case, but sometimes it's pretty useful. And let's take a look at actually looking at metadata. So on the left side, this is if you actually right click on a program in Windows, you do the file properties option. You can actually see here, this is a Word doc where it tells you the author of the Word doc, as well as like when the Word doc was created and edited. And on the right side, this is an image I uploaded to this metadata viewer. And you can see here basic information. There's the camera, there's the date when the photo was taken, there's GPS coordinates, latitude, longitude. I'm able to get all of that by uploading my file to an online metadata viewer. All right, let's move on to another concept. Reverse image searching. This is extremely powerful. So if you're not aware, you can do what's called a reverse image search where you take an image and you send it to Google, and Google will tell you or show you other images which are similar to the image that you uploaded. And if you don't know, for example, like what maybe you're looking at an image and you don't know what is the thing in the image, if you do a reverse image search, Google might tell you, hey, I found a similar image on this website, and maybe that website will give you additional information to help you find out what the thing is that you're looking at. You can also use reverse image searches to identify fake information. So with the Russian invasion of Ukraine, there's been like a lot of fake narratives, fake stories of things happening in Ukraine. And people, especially news agencies, have been able to verify the authenticity of those claims by doing reverse image searches. So someone might have a video clip or an image of some military activity and say that it's from the war. You could do a reverse image search of like a still of that video or the image itself and see, oh, this image was actually uploaded 2, 3, 4 years ago, and it's the exact same thing, and it's from something else, right? So I've seen like military parades or military exercises from years past being uploaded to like Twitter, people claiming this is from the war in Ukraine, and people are able to say no, it's not from the war in Ukraine because they did a reverse image search and found out that that photo was posted 2, 3 years ago and it was a military parade. And so reverse image searching is a very interesting way to actually find out, you know, what the context is behind that image, and maybe that will help you verify authenticity of something or understand more about the thing that you're looking at. I've got here as well some open source intelligence tools just generically. Open source intelligence is just such a wide field. There's so many things involved in open source intelligence that I can't possibly cover it all in a single episode. So here are some different sites that you should check out to help you with open source intelligence. Um, I mentioned the metadata viewer that you saw in the previous screenshot. That's xf.regex.info. That's a metadata viewer. There's also images.google.com for reverse image searching. GitHub is a website where people upload their code. It's a code repository. Some people have private code on there, some people have public code on there. Sometimes that public code can give you insight into what is going on in the technology or the software that an individual or company is using. Maybe there's also an accidental upload of their passwords or their private keys that they put on GitHub that you can find. There's also a website called Shodan.io, which is basically a search engine for web services. So Google will show you web pages. Shodan.io will show you like IP addresses and what web services are running on those IP addresses. There's also graynoise.io, which is basically an IP reputation search. So if you are seeing an IP address somewhere and you don't know, is this a legitimate IP address? Is this a malicious IP address? It basically, is this an IP address that I should be worried about? Is someone like running cyber attacks from this IP address? You can use gray noise to help you identify that. There's also maxmind.com, which is GeoIP lookup. If you see an IP address, IP addresses are typically associated with an ISP or an internet service provider who's allocated a set of IP addresses for like a geographic region. And so you can use the MaxMind database to take an IP address and find out, generally speaking, like where is that IP address located in the world. It's usually accurate to like the city or state level, but not to like um, not to like feet or like an address level. It'll give you accuracy of like tens of miles. There's also archive.org, the Internet Archive. If there is something on the internet that is no longer available, the Internet Archive might have a copy of that resource, and you can use that to search for previous versions of websites, or like I said, something that might have been taken down. So there's a lot of tools out there to help you do open source intelligence. This is just scratching the surface. I'm sure people have other suggestions for tools that they would use for open source intel. But I think these are kind of the key ones that you should take a look at using. Generally speaking, when you're doing open source intelligence, it's a great idea to start by doing just a generic online search for what it is you're looking for. Try to get good at figure out what keywords and how much description you need to provide in your search to get you the thing that you're looking for. But with that in mind, let's actually do some demos and actually go through this process of doing open source intelligence. All right. And I haven't seen any questions about this topic so far in the chat. So if you've got any questions right now, would be a great time to ask. And let me jump into the demo. So I've got my Kali machine over here. I'm just going to log in. And I already have up an open source intelligence challenge from the practice gym on Cyber Skyline. And this is a very easy metadata challenge. Actually, we actually tell you that your goal is to extract some metadata. And we have all these different questions that were being asked about this photo. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to download the photo, going to save it, and I'm going to go online. I'm going to search for online metadata viewer. And I've used this exifregex.info before. This is Jeffrey's image metadata viewer. And this is very, very simple. I just go to my downloads. I take the image here, and then I can view the data. And this is actually the screenshot I had in the slides. But you can see here the camera, the exposure, the date that this was taken, the location, the coordinates. There's even additional information about, the density of the image, copyright notice, even the shutter speed. There's a lot of information in the metadata here. With this, we can just quickly start answering some of these questions. When was the image created? Looks like we're looking at May 15th, 2015. All right, May 15th, May 15th, 2015. At what time? 2:14 a.m. 2:14 a.m. All right. It's as simple as that. So being able to actually get the metadata was basically a Google search, a click, and a file upload. Very, very quick and simple. I'll answer a couple more of these, but I think you probably get the gist from here, right? Now it's just me trying to find this information from the metadata. So I'm trying to find the make of the camera. Is this Apple iPhone 5? Yep. Um, and then where was the photo taken? Gonna copy that. Oh, did I get it wrong? Oh, I gotta put the 4 decimal places. N W. Now, now I'm confusing myself. All right, I think you get the gist of this. I'm not going to spend too much time figuring out what I'm doing wrong here, but you can get the GPS coordinates from the metadata. Now let's move on to another challenge. So I downloaded a picture of some hardware. This is like a piece of industrial control hardware. And my goal here is specifically to try to find out what the heck is this device that we're looking at. And I need to also figure out, try to find a user manual for this device. And what I'm going to do is um, go and do a reverse image search. So if I go to images.google.com, I click on this button here, this little camera icon, search by image. I can upload an image. I'll just go to my downloads. I will select my image, and Google will do the reverse image search. It'll say, hey, here are some similar looking things. I also find a website link here that is showing me. So it's saying this is Eaton. Eaton matches this little logo up here. So we have the logo of the device. It matches here. Let me see if that serial number also matches. I mean, this photo looks very, very similar. View image. It's a little bit blurry, but even if I can't see the serial number, I can verify things such as, these ports all match up, right? There's like a USB port, an Ethernet port. They've got these 4 other ports, and then this green thing over here. So visually, these look basically the exact same. I think the angle of this photo might be slightly different. So um, it's a slightly different image, but it's basically the exact same thing. And I can see here, this is the model number of this device, and they have documentation here. Doesn't seem to be loading. What if I just go and take this model number and I do a search for user manual? All right, so here's the user manual for this device, and that picture matches. I think you can even see the serial number here and everything. This is definitely the device that we're looking for. And so you can imagine a potential use case for this is, say you're doing a physical security audit on a facility, you're doing a physical pen test. Let's just say that you are able to get to like a supply closet or some sort of maintenance area, and you're able to find a device like this. There might be information here about, maybe there's a default password to get to the admin panel on this device, and you can find that from the user manual. At the very least, you can figure out information like how do I shut down this device, um, or how can I make a modification to this device. So that's the implications of doing like a open source intelligence search. If you're doing like a physical pen test, you could even find this device and figure out how to put it out of commission. And that was a very, very quick process, right? All I did was, you know, take the image, go to Google, upload it, and immediately I'm able to find, here's the manufacturer of this device, here's the model number, and even, here's a user manual for how to control this device. I'm looking at the chat right now, and I'm seeing that someone's pointing out that I typed in the wrong east and west. So for the metadata challenge. So I've got north and I've got east here. And I typed in west, so if I typed in east. All right. Thank you for pointing that out. We solved the problem. We figured it out. I saw the W from the sample and I typed in W, but I should have been smart about it and realized that actually this is in the east coordinate. It's not west. Okay. Got some other questions in the chat. Someone's asking, can someone change the information for a photo? Yes, it is possible to find a metadata editor and change the metadata for an image. In fact, I think that's exactly what we did with this image of the lamb. Is we used one of those editors and changed the GPS coordinates in this image. I don't think it actually had any GPS coordinates to begin with, and we injected those GPS coordinates. There are also services that will help remove metadata from images. And I know that a lot of social media websites now, as like a safety and security thing, will by default remove metadata when you upload it to the website so that other people viewing that will not be able to obtain it. But you don't want to trust those very much. And so be very cautious. Keep in mind what is happening when you are uploading images online. Be very mindful of that data because you might accidentally provide some sensitive information that you don't intend to provide. All right. Some other questions. So I got a question. Do I have to use a VirtualBox to be able to do the challenges? You don't need VirtualBox, although I would recommend something like VirtualBox or VMware to provide you with that virtual environment where you can basically take a snapshot and revert your state in case you make some sort of error or mistake down the line. All right. Now let's do a more comprehensive search. I mentioned Google Dorking, and so let's try that out. I'm going to go to the Exploit DB site, and we're going to use one of their Google Dorks as a starting point. So I was looking earlier, and I saw that there was this Google Dork here that searches for um, an index of page that includes a setting.py file. So this is going to be looking for one of those, pages which lists all the files in a directory. And one of those files is going to be settings.py, which py is a Python file. And so this is looking for a Python web application that has its settings exposed. So let's do the search there. And this top result looks interesting. We've got a result from vt.edu. I believe that's Virginia Tech. Yep, that's Virginia Tech. So let me click on this. And it looks like we've got, okay, so here's the settings.py. Let me open this up. So if I go to my downloads, I got the settings.py file. Okay. So it looks like it's this settings.py file is connecting to some sort of database. So the web application is connecting to a database. It looks like a SQLite database, quiz1.db, and it's got all these other settings which look like they're kind of in their default settings. This looks like a file path. So this actually tells me that this is a file path on the user's computer. It looks like they are running a Linux machine. That's the /home. Their username is np89, and they have this quiz folder inside their home directory. And inside the quiz folder, there's a templates folder as well. Okay, so just from looking, so that quick Google Dork, right? It gave us basically a web application from what I would guess is, I think it's a professor. I mean, someone from Virginia Tech, and we have right now the we have the username that they have on their computer, and I would assume that this appears to be like a QBank is QuizBank. So this looks like an application for the quiz for some quizzes. Okay, let's see what else we can find here. We've got this templates. So I don't know if this was completed. Write a problem. I mean, this looks like some sort of quiz application help, but it doesn't look like it's been completed. There's a lot of these different files that we can download and take a look at. Here's an admin.py. That looks interesting. Let's take a poke at these. So we looked at settings.py. Let's go to manage.py. There's like nothing in here. Admin.py. All right. Nothing particularly interesting in here. Now you can see here that, I don't really know what I'm looking for. I'm just trying to poke around and understand what's going on. Um, we've got some interesting information. I want to see if I can find some sort of password. So we've got this db.sqlite3. I'm going to save that. That sounds interesting. And I got a quiz1.db, which sounds interesting. I'm going to save that as well. So I'm going to pop open my trusty terminal, and I'm going to go to my downloads, and I'm just going to take a look at this. So I've got SQLite 3, db.sqlite 3, and now I'm just like straight up looking at the database. I can see here that there's this like auth user. So let me just see what's inside auth user. Select star from auth user. All right. Well, we've got a username, we've got an email address. I think this might be the date that this entry was created, and we've got an encrypted password, PBKDF2 password. If I actually, I think, what is it, schema auth user. This will tell me what those columns mean. So ID, password, last login, username, first name, last name, email address, date joined. So looks like this was created back in 2013. That's interesting. But keep in mind the implications of what's going on here, right? I don't know if this is like an application which was intended for people to find and do this type of research on it, or if this is like legitimately some sort of quiz application this person was making. But We found all the code for their quiz application. We found their username. We have their email address. We know when this was created. We have their encrypted password. It's possible that we could run this through a password cracker and try to break it and actually get their password to log in. And all of that from like this tiny Google search, right? Like we were just searching for any websites that had this settings.py file. Imagine if you were trying to like break into a website, right? You could specifically search for their website instead of just like generically searching for anything that had an index of in a settings.py. You could get a lot of sensitive information just by doing those searches. Let me poke around a little bit more. And yeah, someone's mentioned this could be a trap. It's entirely possible this is a honeypot as well. I don't really know, but it's interesting to me. And let's take a little bit more of a poke. So if I do SQLite 3 on this quiz1.db, let's see what we got here. QBank hint, QBank choice, QBank answer. So, assuming that this wasn't intended to be found by people, it looks like we can get the answers to the quizzes. So if I do a select star from QBank answer, looks like we got the answers for this quiz. So if I do schema on QBank answer, this will tell me it's the ID, the solution, and the problem ID. So both of the above is the answer to number 1. And this over here is the answer to the question number 2. This is the answer for question number 3. So now we're getting answers to the quizzes. What else do we have? Select star from, well, let's look at the actual questions, right? So QBank problem. Insertion sort multiple, MCQ I assume is multiple choice question. So question 1, we saw the answer to question 1 is both of the above. I don't know what my options are. Let me see what the options are. If I do QBank choice, that should probably give me the choices. And let's get the schema on this. Schema QBank choice. Okay. The choice and the problem ID. So if I look up here, I can see that problem ID 1, problem ID 1, problem ID 1. So these 3 options are the options for problem number 1. The growth rates are the same. The runtime in average case is about half of that of the worst case, and none of the above. And we know that the answer to that question is both of the above. Huh. This professor is trolling their students, I think. That's not even an option. All right, maybe this is a honeypot. So for those of you who don't know what a honeypot is, a honeypot is basically a trap. It's like a fake. It's fake. It's a fake asset that you create, which is intended to be found to for like a variety of behaviors. So maybe you're doing research and you're trying to understand what hackers' behavior would be if they find something. So someone finds your honeypot. It's this repository of this code for these answers. Maybe this professor is trying to find students who are trying to steal the answers for the quizzes. And they're recording the IP addresses so they can find the students who are trying to get the answers to the quizzes. It could be done for kind of checking the behavior and looking at research. It could also be done, I've seen it done for enterprises. It's a commercial offering where you could buy a service that does basically creates honeypots in your corporate network, which will distract hackers and give you an indicator if you've been breached. So basically, if you put a honeypot in your network and you start seeing strange activity in that honeypot, you know now that someone has broken into your corporate network. And the idea with the honeypot is that it's a very, very vulnerable, a very, very easy thing to monitor and detect if something's going on, because it might be harder to tell if um, behavior is occurring on a production system that is supposed to occur. How do you differentiate that behavior from a hacker breaking in and doing something? The honeypot is designed to not have any normal behavior on it. So when you start seeing behavior in that honeypot and it's coming from someone outside of your network, that's a very, very clear indicator that you're being hacked. If you don't have any honeypots in your network, you might not be able to tell that someone broke in and is doing something wonky, because there's always activity on all of your computer systems. And so being able to tell bad behavior from normal behavior is difficult, and it's much easier to determine bad behavior from no behavior. So I don't know what is going on here, if this might be part of a research project or if this is legitimately someone at Virginia Tech is working on this project to create quizzes. Um, if I had to guess, I would say this is probably intentional, but you really don't know. Um, I think this is an interesting thing to look at. At the very least, it's helping us learn about open source intelligence and the types of information that you could obtain from doing open source intelligence. I don't know if there's any additional useful information from here. I can probably do a search, select star from auth user. I wonder if this is any different from what we saw before. It looks like the order in which we got this data is slightly different than from the other database. So if I do .schema auth user, yeah, this is basically the same thing. I don't know if this is the exact same password, but you can see here they made their account in 2013. So Google Dorks are very powerful, right? If you specifically, let's just say, for example, that you know that there's a vulnerability with a specific model of webcam, and that model webcam has a page that is on every single webcam that you can search for using these Google Dorks. You could easily find all of these different webcams on the internet that you could exploit very, 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 very quickly. Let me see what else is out here. Oftentimes I find a lot of junk when I do some of these Google Dorks, but right now I'm just poking around, right? I'm not looking for anything in particular. Yeah, this looks very sketch. I'm just straight up connecting to an IP address. It's not even the domain. Your mileage will vary on these Google Dorks. You know, you're doing a search. If the information isn't there, then it's not there. So there's a limit to how far you can go with Google Dorking and your online searches here. Let's move on to another search. So let's say that I'm trying to figure out what, like, I want to understand the technology of a specific company. So let's just say, for example, let's choose a random company. Let's just choose Snapchat as an example. I want to learn all about Snapchat. Maybe I want to find a vulnerability in Snapchat. How do I go about trying to find that vulnerability? Well, if you want to find a vulnerability in Snapchat, you probably want to see if you can find any code from Snapchat. Maybe you can find some understanding their technologies and their dependencies. Maybe there's a vulnerability in those dependencies that you can exploit. Maybe you can do some social engineering on someone on their developer team and get them to give you some information, or maybe get them to make a backdoor into Snapchat. I'm just spitballing ideas out here, right? Um, you can start using open source intelligence to help you kind of shape this attack that you're trying to do. So let's just say I'm trying to attack Snapchat. If I go, I would start by going to GitHub and seeing if Snapchat has anything that is useful. So off the bat, just me going to Snapchat's GitHub profile, I can see here are the languages that they use: JavaScript, Java, TypeScript, Swift, Objective-C. Um, I could immediately go and start trying to find out if there's any attacks I could do on these languages. Likely, there's not much you can do on the language itself, but if you can find information about some of the dependencies they use, you could do more research into finding a vulnerability in that. And I can actually go in and I can look at some of the code that they're writing. And maybe one of these public projects that they have available has a vulnerability in it. And I can look at the code, and if I know that they use this software in their production systems, then I could write a vulnerability to exploit that code, right? Um, Now, keep in mind that if you're actually doing that, that would be it'd be illegal, it'd be malicious. There are things called bug bounties. Maybe there's a bug bounty that Snapchat has. I can go in Snapchat bug bounty. So Snapchat has a bug bounty program where if you find a vulnerability in any of their code, you might be able to get compensated for that. So they have rewards here. If you find like low, medium, high, and critical vulnerabilities in Snapchat, they'll actually pay you, thousands of dollars depending on how severe that issue is. And they've paid out, close to $500,000 in bounties since they've started this program. So that could be something that is interesting to you. Finding a vulnerability in Snapchat's code and exploiting it that way is definitely illegal. So participating in a bug bounty might be the way to go to do this type of open source intelligence, and then doing like a code review, a code audit would help you, get paid through this bug bounty program potentially. Now, if you wanted to do like a social engineering attack, what I would do is if I go back to GitHub, I can see who are the people who are committing code to this repository. So there's this person here. If I click on this person's profile, maybe I can find some information. I don't see anything readily available, but there are some other people here. So not much from this person. These are all usernames though, so I can like go on Google, I can search for these usernames and see if those are being used elsewhere. Just by searching this username, I'm getting a person and their LinkedIn profile, and I'm pretty sure LinkedIn wants me to log in, so I'm gonna pass on that. But you could pull up their LinkedIn profile and find out more information about them, and uh, maybe there's a an angle there. Here, I found this person. They put their LinkedIn on their GitHub, and I can see that they work at Snapchat. They've been working there for several years already, and these are the technologies they know. So, you know, you could start piecing these together and find out like maybe there is if there was like some more specialized skills listed here, maybe there's something that you could find that could be a vulnerability. So let's just say that they were like a Hadoop expert, and Hadoop is listed as one of their skills. There's a vulnerability that comes out with Hadoop, and you know that Snapchat uses Hadoop. That could be a way to find a vulnerability into Snapchat. A lot of times this is the type of attack that like a nation state would use when they're trying to find a vulnerability and exploit a company. They would actually go to the company, find out the important people working there. Maybe they can try to like bribe someone who works at that company to do something, give some confidential information. They could try to, um, if not bribe, they could try to blackmail someone there, make them an insider threat for that company. Um, just a lot of things that can happen. And it all starts from this open source intelligence, right? Going and finding who are the people that work here? What are the technologies this company uses? How does this company work? How does it operate? I can even go and I can like search, I can go to Indeed.com and I can search for a job at Snapchat. If I typed in developer Snapchat and I don't put any city information, I can find, here's an Android developer for Snapchat in New York. And this, if I click on the job requirements, I can see, they're looking for people who have experience with Kotlin and RX Java and Dagger. So I have no idea what these things are. What if I typed in RX Java? This is a Java VM implementation of Reactive X. Okay, maybe there's a vulnerability with RX Java. And if I know that Snapchat's hiring for someone with these skills, then there's also a chance that Snapchat is using this technology. And so if I know that they're hiring people with these skills and I know that they're using that technology, then if I find a vulnerability in RxJava or sometime down the road a vulnerability comes out with RxJava, that could potentially be an opportunity to exploit Snapchat using that vulnerability because you did the open source intelligence to figure out what software Snapchat is using. So there's a lot of different cool ways that you could use open source intelligence to find potential vulnerabilities, find points of entry to compromise a company. Um, I love open source intelligence because it's just like a huge rabbit hole. There's a lot of different research, a lot of different ways that you can go to find information. And I highly recommend trying these activities just to find information, right? Like choose a company, try to research that company, try to figure out what technologies they use, their software stack, try to find people who work at those companies. To do this in a legal way, just like don't act upon that in any malicious way, but just I would recommend going through that experience of learning what it's like to do that resource collection and to do that level of investigation because it will teach you different skills in doing Google searches, which might be helpful in other tasks that you might have to do in the future. So I hope you found that valuable, found that explanation interesting. Um, if you all have any other recommendations for other topics to cover in the future, please leave those in the chat. I'm looking for other topics to cover in future episodes. It doesn't look like we've got any other questions though. So I'd like to thank you once again for joining us in another episode of Cyber Skyline Live. It's been a pleasure talking about open source intelligence and stay tuned for the next episode. Thank you all and good night.